In episode 1 of the off season, titled Trust the Process, you're going to hear, or you have heard, depending on if you heard it or not. If you haven't heard it, please go back and listen to episode 1 of the off season, Trust the Process. It's already uploaded and available for you to listen to. But in that episode, you're going to hear me reflect in real time on who I was in 2021. And it is so cringy to me. And not just because I disliked who I was in 2021. It's just that I've grown so much. And a lot of what I was able to reflect on in that session, sitting there listening to my 2021 version of myself and in this seat as the 2024 version of myself, was how I was able to get from there to here. And that's why self-reflection is so important, because sometimes we forget it. Like sometimes it's a blur. When I listened to that episode, I quite literally didn't remember some of that stuff. I didn't remember what I was really actually getting ready to reflect on until I went to listen to it for the first time to prepare to come on camera and talk about it. It has been an emotional roller coaster. So some parts of this episode, you're going to see me laughing. You're going to see me cringing. You're going to see me disappointed. You're going to see me cry. And in real life, that's what part of this process is for me. The off season is a part of the process for me to regulate my emotions, understand what I'm going through so that I know what I'm preparing myself for in the spring when it's time to work, when it's time to be creative, and when it's time to amp this process up a little bit. Oh, by the way, spring is when you'll get season 2. You'll get season 2 of this podcast. Your access has been granted podcast in March of 2025. I just dropped the bomb. Y'all know when y'all gonna get season 2. Y'all know when y'all gonna get season 2. So in episode 1, I speak a lot about trust the process being a mantra that me and my cousin KJ came up with in about 2011 or so, when he lost his mom, my aunt, and we were doing all that we could to get through grief. And a lot of what we preached to each other and a lot of what I did in my efforts to be support to him is help him understand that although we don't know what's coming, we have to trust that it's going to work out. Working out has so many options. Like the actual term of working out, no one knows what that means. And that's the struggle of trusting the process for a lot of people. As a matter of fact, let me get my handy dandy notebook, aka my cell phone. I asked some of my regulators on Instagram what thoughts do they have when they hear the phrase trust the process, or what questions do they have when they hear. You seen that? I just messed it up. My hair got caught in my bracelet. One of my regulators said, first, it's what is the process? And the second question is, what if it doesn't work? And I thought that was interesting because a lot of my process and what I can reflect on from the first episode of the off season is that when we made the decision to trust the process, we quite literally chose to face our fears of the unknown with faith of the unknown. I'm going to say that again so that it makes sense. We made a choice. Trusting the process starts out with a choice. You have to choose. You have to choose whether you will or won't. It starts there. We made the choice to face our fears of the unknown by living in faith of the unknown. And when you think about faith, if you're a Christian or if you have a Christian background, if you have, most higher powers in most religions have this mantra or some sort of biblical or principle in place that has the same concept. You have to be able to have faith and evidence of something that you can't see. You have to have hope in something that you can't see in order to get through some of the hardships and the challenges of today. And we literally chose to face our fears with faith of the unknown. And that's the very first thing that I thought of when I saw this question. And again, the question says, what is the process? It's unknown. And second, what if it doesn't work? We don't know. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with that because they have a sense of control that needs to happen. You want to be in control of what's going on, how it's going on, when it's going to begin, and when it's going to end. And if you don't have a sense of what your locus of control is, you are going to struggle to have faith. And I'm going to rewind a little bit and talk about the locus of control because this is all freestyle now. I just want you to know that we're off script. When we speak of the locus of control, I want to go a little bit into that so that we have a little understanding. If we want full videos on this later, write in the comments. We could talk about it later. But the locus of control is the concept where you identify what you have control over, what you don't have control over, and what parts of your life you have a sphere of influence. So when you have full control over the outcome, I want to be clear about that, the outcome. You feel more comfortable in that space because you feel like it's going to get done because I'm the one that's going to do it and I control the outcome because it's me. When you don't have any control of that outcome, you struggle in those spaces. That's that space where faith comes into place because you don't know what's going to happen because you don't have control. But I feel like when we're talking about trusting the process, we work more in the middle of it, the middle of that circle, which is that sphere of influence. You may not completely control the outcome, but you have some influence of the outcome. So when you choose to have faith in the unseen, you also have to put in work. So trusting the process looks like, for us at that time, trying to come out of that grief stricken place that we were in, was setting up a plan to grow, to live, although we struggled to feel like life was going to ever be the same again, which it wasn't. Life was never the same again. We had to put a plan in place to figure out how to live. And that was our sphere of control. We had our sphere of influence was putting work into spaces where we could put in actionable steps and actually move forward, whether that be counseling for grief, whether that be finding your purpose and your passion so that you can actually work in a space that gives you some type of fulfillment, because everything is not always going to be good, but you do have control over how much effort you put in what parts of your life. And we started to focus on that. We started to focus on how we were going to heal as a family. All right. So what I would suggest, and I'm saying suggest, it's a recommendation based on what I know and what my perception of this is, because I am not an advice giver. I'm not here to give advice. But what I would suggest, that if you are struggling with questions like what is the process and how long is this process going to take, you might need to start working on strengthening your faith. Strengthening your faith could be a very good place for you to start when you're talking about struggling with control, when you're thinking about trusting the process, because you're not in control. The very opposite of control is what happens in trusting the process. So you have to start with first strengthening your faith. All right, here's a few things that I've done in the last few years, I would say, to strengthen my faith. And I had a pause when I said the last few years because I've done it inconsistently for the last few years. But within the last year, I've done it consistently with discipline. And I have seen a lot of changes with myself and my faith by doing these things. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that in my stories, I post kind of like my daily activity. And one of my daily activities is grounding. You could ground in multiple ways, but the way that I choose to ground in these days is to walk in the morning. So one of my activities on my to-do list is to get a 2-mile walk in the morning, but outside. I actually adopted that principle from 75 Hard when I did 75 Hard in the beginning of the year in January of 2024. Hence my year of consistency. Sometimes those challenges are hype, sometimes they are legit, but it really do depend on how invested and how determined you are into making those changes. But back to the grounding, I get on the bridge in the morning. I do my incline walks for 2 miles. I'm outside, I'm in nature, I'm connecting, I'm watching the synchronicities of the birds, of the boats, the waves, how the sun rises, how the clouds look different every day depending on what day it is, and the moon phase. And all of that has helped me ground so much. I can't even explain to you how much I feel connected to God in those moments. And that would be my next thing. Staying connected to God has strengthened my faith so much. Outside of the grounding techniques, I have been connected through reintroducing myself to the Bible. Again, this is not a persuasive platform. I'm not trying to persuade you to be Christian. I'm not trying to persuade you to get in your Bible. I'm just sharing my experience because I am Christian. This is what I have done. Um, Recently, probably in the last year, this last year has been very good for my spirituality. In the last year, me and my family have done a family Bible study, and it has been so instrumental in my faith in this year, strengthening my faith this year because the scriptures sound different now. I don't know if I've done enough introspective work or personal development so that I can hear and see things differently, but the weekly Bible studies have grown my faith so much. I literally catch myself during the day when I'm faced with challenges saying, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. Every time I'm faced with a challenge that's not going in the way that I expected it to go, every time I'm faced with some kind of hump that I need to get over that should not have ever been there, because we like to operate in black and white, but the gray area is where we struggle the most at. And in those gray areas, I have leaned on those scriptures that me and my family talk about on Mondays throughout the week consistently to make sure that I can get past these humps. Another one of my favorite scriptures, and I had already started living this lifestyle. I will create my plan, figure out my destination, but once I figure out my destination, I go right back into monthly planning. Plan out the month. I put these things down on paper because I know I need the structure, but I am a day-to-day girl now. Once the structure is laid out for my monthly activities and I know what needs to get done in this month in order to get to my destination by the end of the year, I am day by day, because the black and white is cool. But the way that I have been getting monkey wrenches in my days, the Bible has told me there is no need to worry about tomorrow because there is enough worries in today. And Lord knows, in this year, I have been the most disciplined, the most consistent, the most grounded, and the most connected. And I have also dealt with the most challenges, especially in the last 2 years, than I have ever dealt with before. And if we want to really be real, the last 5 years. So my faith has grown so much over the last few years, but even more so in the last year because I've put so much intention into being grounded and being connected to God. And the last thing I would say is that I live and breathe in gratitude. I don't care what's going on in my life. I am grateful to be alive. I am grateful to be able to have the willpower, the mental fortitude, the strength in my body, the strength in my mind, the regulation in my emotions to be able to navigate life as it has been lifing. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I wish that everything could go as planned. I hoped when I was a kid that life would be easier than what it is, but it's not. But my perspective on life has changed so much because I'm grateful that I handle the challenges like a champ. I deal with what's in front of me. I deal with my problems of today. I go to sleep at night and we deal with tomorrow. So being connected, being grounded, and being grateful has helped me. I don't even know the word to use because it's like mind blowing to me sometimes when I am in a situation and I can see the growth. I am really sometimes looking at myself like, you really have done the work because you are really moving through this life like, girl, who are you? So I will definitely suggest that at the end of the day, if you're struggling to trust the process, your faith may be at question. You may need to visit what needs to be done to strengthen your faith in order for you to be able to trust the process, aka have hope and faith in the unknown. All right, one last point before we move on. I want to kind of like visit this idea, right? I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm not saying it's you. I'm just saying maybe it was me. Maybe I'm the only one experienced this. But a lot of trusting the process was difficult for me before I strengthened my faith because I didn't trust myself. And you probably be saying to yourself, what does trusting myself have to do with trusting the process? A lot of times we don't realize that what we experience determines how we see the world and all of the processes around us. So if you set a task for yourself, if you write down your goals and you look at your goals at the end of the month and you haven't achieved them, 9 times out of 10, you're talking to yourself negatively. You're like, why am I struggling to achieve my goals? You don't trust yourself to do what you said you're going to do. So how are you going to trust a process that you can't see, feel, or hear? You are going to continue to struggle with trusting anyone or any process if you can't trust yourself. So, another thing that I would like to suggest is that you start being who you are or who you know you are to yourself wholeheartedly with no excuses, no exceptions, no options. You are not an option. You are a priority. And if you start doing the things that you said that you're going to do, if you start doing the things that you said is going to make you the best version of yourself, you'll start to see that you'll start trusting yourself more and it'll make it easier for you to trust the process. All right, regulators. So at the end of episode 1, Trust the Process, you're going to see me, or you have seen me. I keep saying that because I don't know if you watched the episode or not. If you haven't watched the episode, please go back and watch episode 1. Make sure you watch episode 1 of Your Access Has Been Granted podcast, the off season, so that you can make sure that these wrap ups make sense to you. If you didn't, stop right now, go back and watch, and come back to the wrap up. But if you did, let's continue. I had a whole moment of tears talking about my niece Tamia. I'm a very private person. So although this information is very public information and a lot of people close to me knew what was happening in my life, I didn't broadcast that information. But trusting the process has revisited me again in this very moment as we speak, just this week. We've had to revisit stuff about Tamia's case, and me trying to get out of being so private and making sure my baby name stays alive is very important to me. So I decided that I was going to come back here and wrap up a little bit of what happened in that episode. When you see me crying to what's going on right now in today's time. Today's time, like it was a long time ago, but today, as of today, I told you in that episode that both of the people responsible for what had happened to her had been found guilty and were incarcerated. This is where faith plays. This is a real time look into how faith is going to get me through a process. I do not know what's going to happen at the end of this process. I have no clue what's in the plans as of right now, but something has happened legally that I have never expected to happen. And we are going back to trial for one of the people that were found guilty for what happened to my niece. And sometimes I'm stunned because I can't fathom the thought that someone would be found guilty, incarcerated, starting to serve their time, and we're back at trial. So what happened is something happened legally, and a search was found illegal. In that, the defendant was granted a reversal. So with that comes a retrial. And me and my family have to sit through another 5 to 6 days of a trial and pray and hope and have faith that this person will still get the consequences that we feel they deserve for what they've done to not only my niece, but to other people. And I say that person because I'm not saying names. Google is free. If you look up Tamia Johnson, you'll be able to find information on her case, but I'm not giving them any airtime. But I do want to make sure I'm intentional about not only keeping my baby name alive, but letting you into the process that I'm going through in hibernation season. And I've faced most of the last few years when I've intentionally been paying attention and been intentional about my introspective work. This season always comes with some kind of like boomerang for me. This season always comes with so many bumps in the road, so many things that was unexpected. And if I'm going to commit to doing this process with you guys, I feel like I should let you in. So right now, me and my family are experiencing a space where our faith is being tested because we were in a space of closure. We had no thought that we would be revisiting this. And here we are back in court. We just went to a hearing on Wednesday, just this past Wednesday, where we had to sit there and see if they were going to give him bond to go home. That day, he could have very legally been able to walk out of the jail and go home that day. That did not work out in his favor. The judge found it necessary to keep him incarcerated. And right now we're just waiting. So throughout the off season, I'm going to check in with you guys just to let you know how we're feeling. Right now, trial isn't until January, but I feel inclined to be open more about this situation and keep my baby name alive, because there's no goodness coming in keeping her name to ourselves or what's going on to ourselves. And there's nothing more real than you being able to see me and my family go through this process through my eyes and my perspective. So I just wanted to share that with you, because if we're going to talk about trusting the process, I got to give you some real life examples. And I want to refer to something that my pastor said this week, Pastor Everett, based out of New Orleans. He does a morning prayer. And this week he talked about faith and fruit. And he said, if you don't have any fruit, do you have faith? And that has stuck with me all week, because if I'm going to say I have faith and I am going to sit here and explain to you what principles I've learned to trust the process, you're going to have to see that. Like, you're going to need to see me act in that way. Because honestly, when it happened, I had sadness, I had tears. We sat together and we cried. But immediately after, I immediately remembered the scripture. My ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts. I have no idea what is planned for that young man in this process, but I know that I have to have faith, and I have to trust the process and know that my baby was good. Her heart was good. Our hearts are good. We have no ill intent, and we have good intentions towards everybody, and we just have to trust the process that is going to work in our favor. So I just wanted to share that with you guys transparently, so that you can actively know that, baby, it's ongoing. You're going to have to always trust the process. You don't just learn something and then that's it. No, you learn it on different levels. It's like different levels. This stuff revisits you. It's a new one, a new devil. It's always ongoing. So I just wanted to transparently share that with you guys, so that we can support each other through this process, because this is going to be a difficult process for me and my family, reliving the trauma, having to always bring this back up, having to always revisit it. And I don't know if you've ever sat in a trial for 5 to 6 days, especially speaking of your loved one and what happened to your loved one, but it is not an easy feat. We have done this twice with both defendant and the co-defendant, and both trials were at least 2 to 3 weeks combined. And it's I'm strong, and I keep asking God why you had to make me one of your strongest soldiers. But I do. We need support, and I am not going to keep my baby's name quiet. So if you are a prayer for me and my family. If not, just support me in any way you feel like you want to support me. But yes, you are not alone. You are not the only one going through things. We are all going through things, and we all have to trust the process. Can't wait to talk to you guys again. Bye.